Hi, everyone. So thanks for all your participation in class this week. This is just a little video to recap on some of the things that we said about iambic pentameter. I'm aware that for some of you this is new, and it's really important that you don't find yourself overwhelmed, because you need to see iambic pentameter not as a straitjacket, but as a safety net. It's something that, if you observe it, will carry you through in all of the even really difficult roles that you might come to. It's something that is there to help you. So just to recap then, let's think about what iambic pentameter is. Well, as I said, all it means is that there are 5 feet, 5 walks. So iambic means a step, pent means 5, meter is a unit of measurements. So basically it's 5 steps. That's all it is. Now, most regular lines of iambic pentameter, and you could easily say that 95% of Shakespeare comprises regular lines, completely regular lines of iambic pentameter, they have 10 syllables. So thinking about Helena's speech, how happy some or other some can be, 10 syllables. Those 10 syllables are broken down into 5 beats. So let's see how that goes with the Helena line again. How happy some or other some can be. Dee-dum, 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 dee-dum. Observing the verse is called scansion. Scansion can again sound off-putting, but all it means is that you're just taking note of the syllables and the beats. When you're scanning and when you're coming to iambic pentameter for the first time, the best way to think about the rhythm is dee-dum, 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 dee-dum. So as an exercise, just try walking up and down now with dee-dum, 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 dee-dum. You should find that it fits really easily to your walk. The D is when your foot is going up, the dum is when your foot is going down. Dee-dum, 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 dee-dum. So walking around in a very casual way with dee-dum, 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 dee-dum in your mind is one of the best ways to get Shakespeare's rhythm into you. And as I said this week in class, once the iambic pentameter is in you, you can actually never get rid of it, and therefore you do not need to worry about it. The key is you observe it, you scan the line, but then you let it go because it's there. It's already intrinsic to you. So you can write dee-dum, 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 dee-dum in your head, or you can think about it in your head, or you can actually scan the lines, and you scan the lines like this, with that sort of a sign over the D and that sign over the dum. This, practically speaking, looks like this. Just move the speed. There we go. How happy some or other some can be. And there we see the scansion. And what the scansion means is that we say how happy some or other some can be. And so we go down through Athens, I am thought as fair as she. But what of that? Demetrius thinks not so. He will not know what all but he do know. And as he errs doting on Hermia's eyes, so I admiring of his qualities. Now, I want to make it really clear. I want to reiterate. I could not reiterate this more strongly. To speak verse like that, I'm speaking up, I'm speaking down, how dull. That is absolute death. You do not want to do that. And that is not verse speaking. All that is that speaking up and down, etc. All that is simply noting in your body how the rhythm goes. But then you let the rhythm, you release the rhythm, because as I say, it's part of you. Now, you release the rhythm primarily by concentrating on what is actually happening in the speech. I've said to you all that an actor's job is not to emote. A good performance is not when you feel that you've really felt the emotions and you've cried. A good performance is when you communicate to the audience. As simple as that. Now, that involves a lot of what you've already learned about the magic if and about circles of concentration and the given circumstances. You have to put all that into context. So we've got to remember the given circumstances of Helena in this speech, that her boyfriend has fallen in love with her best friend, and so she's feeling multiple levels of jealousy, of sadness, of grief, and also of a sense of betrayal. All of that's going on. That's the given circumstance, and you need to remember that. But you also need to speak the speech. And speaking speech is first and foremost about conveying thought. How do you convey thought? Well, you do it very simply. Less is always more in acting. First of all, then, let's think about the progression of this speech. How happy some or other some can be. So all she's saying there is that some people can be really happy when contrasted with other people who can be really miserable. One thought. But of course, you don't need to paraphrase that thought because the thought is already there in the language. The reason that I'm giving the gloss is to show you how the thoughts can progress. The more Shakespeare you do and the more Shakespeare you watch, the less you'll have to paraphrase to see the progression of thoughts because the thoughts are there in the lines. So, thought number one. Thought number two, through Athens I am thought as fair as she. So, thought number two is simply, everybody thinks I'm just as gorgeous as she is. Thought number three, but what of that? Demetrius thinks not so. They're basically connected, those two thoughts. You can have them as two separate ones, but what of that? I.e., why am I even thinking that? And then the reason she asks herself, why am I thinking that, is because Demetrius thinks not so. Next thought, 4. He will not know what all but he do know. He simply refuses to understand what everybody else knows, which is, I am as pretty and as gorgeous as Hermia. Final thought in this passage, thought number 5. And as he errs, doting on Hermia's eyes, so I, admiring of his qualities. And so there we have the final thought. I am just as bad as Demetrius. There he is going, oh God, I love you, about the way Hermia looks, about her eyes, and I'm doing just the same about him, about all of his qualities. So once you get the thoughts clear, you can see the progression. And this progression is very simple. It's very easy. There are, however, different ways that a thought can progress. And some of that means that the thought goes over the line. So in all of these sentences, dum, 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 until that one, the thought goes together with the sentence. The thought is contained in the line. But with these two last ones, the thought goes over 2 lines. As he errs, doting on Hermia's eyes, so I, admiring of his qualities. When a line goes, when a thought goes over 2 lines with no punctuation, there's no full stop there, we'll ignore the commas for the time being for different reasons I'll talk to later. That's called enjambment, or sometimes enjambment, you might have heard it. That's how a lot of Australians pronounce it. All it means is that the thought carries over the lines. Now, this is very simple. This speech is early Shakespeare, early in his career. It's a very simple verse. When you get to later verse, you'll see that the enjambments can be quite impressive. So I, for instance, played Goneril in King Lear. She has a speech which is 9 lines long of one thought. There are 9 lines of enjambment before we get to the conclusion. So practicing with Helena, with simple Shakespeare, is a good idea before you move on to the tricky stuff. In terms then of conveying the thought, well, the most important thing is to observe the antithesis. So to remind you, an antithesis is when you put 2 things in contrast with each other, and sometimes they battle it out, and sometimes they are closely connected. So let's look at the antitheses here. How happy some or other some can be. So there's an antithesis between this some and that some. But this some is qualified also by other. So you've got to pay attention to both of those. Some or other some can be. Through Athens I am thought as fair as she. Through Athens I am thought as fair as she. So we're contrasting I and she. What of that Demetrius thinks not so? Well, seemingly there's no antithesis there. He will not know what all but he do know. So now we have he contrasted with all but he. In other words, everyone except him. He will not know what all but he do know. And think about the knows. He will not know what all but he do know. So you have a double antithesis going on in this line. He, all but he, not know, do know. And this, albeit not overt, is a continuation of think. So we have thinks not so, will not know, do know. All of those are sort of linked together as well. Now, for the time being, you just play this antithesis. He, all but he, will not know, do know. As he errs, doting on Hermia's eyes, so I. So we have he, as he errs, so I. As he, so I. Doting, admiring Hermia's eyes, his qualities. This is a major one. He, I, errs, okay, less that. So I'll do that again. He and I come together. Doting, admiring go together. Eyes, qualities go together. Hermia's, his go together. Now, you cannot possibly play all of that. It will drive you mad and it will completely stop the flow. But if you have done your homework on the antithesis, it means that you are able to make this speech fluent, but at the same time put across the meaning. How happy some or other some can be. Through Athens, I am thought as fair as she. But what of that? Demetrius thinks not so. He will not know what all but he do know. And as he errs, doting on Hermia's eyes, so I, admiring of his qualities. So it's quite easy once you know the antithesis to let the antithesis go. The important thing is that you have recognized it, because that tells you the thought. Now, as we discussed also in class, all actors of Shakespeare need to think about how we can make the language alive, how we can make the language sing. And we do that by fresh minting, new coining, or pinging the language. Part of this is about modulation. Remember, if I speak on one tone all the time and then go down at the end of the word, it's quite boring. But if you actually use modulation, then sometimes you can capture the audience, even if they're feeling very, very tired, and the production is pretty soporific. You can do that by actually just training the ear. You can do that by training your ear, da 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 da, boring as hell. You can do that by training your ear, da 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 da. Now, there is always the problem, there is always the danger that you're going to sound too emphatic, over emphatic, a little bit hammy by using so much modulation. But you know what? You can always bring modulation down, whereas you can never bring it up. Think how difficult it is to say you can always bring modulation down, but you can never bring it up. How difficult it is to make that sentence alive. The only way you can do it is to ping and to fresh mint new words. So you pay attention to what are the important nouns, the important verbs, the important adjectives, and you ping them. And you can also do that. You can also make your language live by associating that language with other emotions and other sensations. So we did this in class with how. For some people, how was a velvety chocolate with a coffee taste to it. For somebody else, it was a butter chicken. For somebody else, it was a green lemony taste. For somebody, happy was a lemon chubba chop. Every single word has associations with you. Now, when you're acting the speech, you do not think, okay, here comes the word that's actually butter chicken. Here comes the word that's a yellow chubba chop. You don't do that. But in your homework, simply by associating words with tastes, sensations, roughness, smoothnesses, what happens is that your words get their own life. They get a different nuance, they get depth, they get sophistication. And so consequently, when you come to say them in the sentence with an observation of the antithesis, playing the important words, pinging the important words, what happens is your audience listens. So that's the rundown of what we did this week. I just want us to go through, I'm just passing through this because we will do that next week. I just want us to go then through the checklist of things it's important that you look at when you're preparing your speech. First of all, it's got to be verse. So you've got to check that it's iambic pentameter. You look up the words you don't understand. So think about the penultimate sentence of that little speech of Helena. I mean, the bit that I gave you, not the whole speech. As he errs, doting on Hermia's eyes. So if you don't know what errs means, simply look it up. It's not that hard, just look it up. That's your job as an actor, to know what you're saying. Divide the speech into thoughts. Well, we did that with Helena. We found out that there were 4 main thoughts in a speech of 5 lines. And so there were 4 thoughts that built up progressively that you need to be aware of. And think too about the thought carrying over the lines. In other words, are there enjambements or not? In the verse, count the syllables and also work out whether it's a regular pentameter. Remember, you count the syllables, how happy some or other some can be. You work out if it's a regular pentameter by counting and scanning the pentameter. How happy some or other some can be. Dee-dum, 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 dee-dum. And note the words that start and finish a sentence, start and finish a line, start and finish a thought. And those are the words that you need to ping more than any. So for instance, never, ever, ever let the last word drop. How happy some or other some can be. Duh. You have to use the last word as a springboard to take you into the next line. How happy some or other some can be. Through Athens I am thought as fair as she. But what of that? Demetrius thinks not so. He will not know what all, but he do know. Energizing the final word of a line helps you go into the next line. And also playing with energy the first word of the line. How happy some or other some can be. Through Athens I'm thought as fair as she. But what of that? Yeah, that's a good one. He will not know, and as he errs, so I. So those first and last words are really important. So as you're working on your speech, make sure that you've done all of that on the checklist. Spend some time, don't be lazy. And if you can spend the time and follow through with the checklist, you will find this incredibly rewarding and incredibly valuable to your acting practice. Okay, guys, I will catch you next week. So have a great week and I will see you soon. I'm just going to end the meeting now. Okay, bye.